Our story begins at a bustling travel agency where clients are constantly arriving, keeping everyone on their toes. Among the employees is Asako Kuru, who appears to be the boss. She calls over our main character, Teya Ohara, a hardworking yet shy man who tends to overthink everything he says, causing him both professional and personal struggles. After a long day at work, Teya returns to his quiet apartment where he lives alone with his cat, Kay. As he eats dinner, he reflects on an encounter with his coworker, Ra Hanoi, who had looked at him earlier with a serious, unwavering gaze. Teya wonders how long he's worked at the company without much change and is struck by how content his colleague, Takuya, seems with his life. At the office, Teya meets Atsuma Kia, the most cheerful and seemingly hardest-working employee. Her positivity motivates the entire team, even encouraging them to clean up the office. Meanwhile, Teya notices Ra staring at him, which makes him feel uncomfortable. He tries to avoid her gaze, thinking it's intentional, but Ra is simply unaware of her habit of staring at people. She just wants to talk to him, but her behavior makes others wary of her. Wanting to avoid causing trouble, Ra decides to leave things as they are. Later, Ra visits a bookstore, where she finds something that brings a faint smile to her face. At home, we see her true passion, studying maps and imagining the paths of various places. One day, Asako gathers everyone for an announcement. A representative from the head office, Mamoru, reveals that the company is expanding internationally to Alaska and will need someone to manage the new branch. Since the location is remote, they are looking for someone with no family or spouse. The news shocks everyone, and Asako clarifies that they have 365 days to decide who will go, but no one is eager to volunteer. Later, Natsu jokingly suggests that the best way to avoid being sent to Alaska is to get married within the year. This leads Teya to realize that he has no friends or acquaintances who could help with such a plan, making him a likely candidate for the assignment. Back home, Ra does some research on Alaska but is terrified at the thought of going. Her limited social skills would make the situation harder, and she despises insects. However, she struggles to find a solution. One day, after visiting the vet with Kay, Teya unexpectedly runs into Ra. Despite his usual nervousness, he thanks her for her help at work and reveals that he plans to quit to care for his cat, who was rescued after a severe injury. Ra understands Teya's decision, but suggests an unexpected solution: a fake marriage to prevent them from being sent to Alaska. She explains that she has her own reasons for wanting to stay. Hesitant at first, Teya agrees. Ra informs Asako about their fake marriage and asks her to keep it quiet. Surprisingly, Asako is thrilled and declares that they are perfect for each other. The plan works unexpectedly well, but the new dynamic creates tension between Ra and Teya at work. Asako assigns Teya additional tasks and pairs him with Ra, and the two work late into the night. They are asked to deliver completed documents to a restaurant where Asako is dining, only to find their co-workers gathered there to celebrate their fake marriage. Ra, taking things to an extreme, pretends to be pregnant, which leads Asako to believe the lie. The situation grows even more awkward when Ra sings a terrible performance at the celebration to diffuse the tension. Teya notices her effort and feels grateful afterward. As the evening ends, Teya escorts Ra home, and they share a moment that unexpectedly turns romantic. However, Ra decides to leave alone, and Teya, overthinking, struggles to express his feelings. Ra begins to plan a backstory for their fake marriage and exchanges personal details with Teya to develop their cover story. During their date, they start noticing small details about each other. Ra presents Teya with 2 rings to make their engagement appear more convincing. But when Teya tries to propose, he hesitates, unsure of how to move forward. Ra assures him she'll wait until he's ready, and Teya spends the night reflecting on his feelings, realizing he can't take the step, even if it's just pretend. Later, as Ra spends time at the beach, she receives a message from her mother, who has arrived in Tokyo. Despite feeling overwhelmed by the fake marriage, Ra decides to put aside her concerns and enjoy her time alone. Teya, after much hesitation, finally puts on the engagement ring, signaling that he's ready to give his all to make their plan work. However, Things take a turn when he receives a mysterious phone call from someone claiming to know about their fake marriage and threatening to send them both to Alaska because of the lie. This leaves Teya and Ra questioning who could have made the call, and they begin to suspect someone from work. As they navigate their evolving relationship, they must confront the complexities of their fake marriage and the unexpected consequences it brings. The story revolves around Takuya and Ra, with a surprising twist involving Claudia, Takuya's family, and a series of misunderstandings. It all begins with Takuya and Claudia visiting different places around town, impressing her with his knowledge. Claudia, a princess, has escaped her security team, and Ra, Takuya's colleague, is curious about how the two are getting along. Takuya takes Claudia to places he believes she will enjoy, including a rooftop at a school, evoking nostalgic memories for Claudia. Ra, in particular, becomes obsessed with finding out more about the situation, even looking up news about Claudia online. As the day progresses, Takuya is ready to return Claudia to her hotel, but before they leave, Claudia expresses a desire to visit Takuya's house. Ra, unsure of why Claudia is there, convinces herself it's just a professional visit. However, when she arrives and overhears Claudia's voice inside, she can't resist peeking in. She sees Claudia wearing a school uniform, which makes Ra's mind race with various thoughts. Ra tries to trust Takuya's professionalism but is clearly jealous. Inside the house, Claudia opens a door to reveal a room where Takuya's cat, Kay, is, and things escalate when Claudia is knocked over and lands on Takuya, causing her to scream. Ra, hearing the commotion, rushes in and finds them together. She orders Takuya not to bring women into his house so easily. However, the situation takes a surprising turn when Claudia reveals that she knows Ra. It turns out that Takuya had told Claudia about Ra and had been updating her via messages about their situation. A flashback reveals that, earlier, Takuya had declined to bring Claudia to his house, explaining that he was engaged and his partner would be there. This misunderstanding helps reveal more about Claudia's past. She married for status, but is truly in love with someone named Marie. Claudia plans to renounce her princess title and live a quiet life with Marie, confiding in both Takuya and Ra. After saying her goodbyes, Claudia leaves, and Ra immediately apologizes for causing trouble. Takuya, curious, asks why Ra came to his house if she hadn't read his messages. Ra then reveals a frog-shaped stone, a gift from Koichi, that symbolizes her hobby of collecting stones. This shared moment allows Takuya and Ra to grow closer. Takuya receives messages from his sister about explaining his engagement, prompting him to return to his childhood home. He doesn't want to go, but the situation forces him to face his family. Ra seems to avoid Takuya, embarrassed by past incidents, but she's clearly concerned about the trip. Fortunately, Hiromi mentions that Takuya will be going home, surprising everyone since this means he will introduce Ra as his fiancé, increasing the misunderstanding. Takuya clarifies the situation, assuring everyone that they needn't worry. However, before they leave, a mysterious voice calls Ra, claiming that it's normal for engaged couples to travel together. To avoid raising suspicions, Takuya and Ra must go together. The two set off on the trip, and Takuya is nervous about talking to Ra. They begin a conversation about Ra's childhood, and she opens up about how her father was absent, and her mother's constant traveling left her alone. Ra developed a hobby of following maps and imagining traveling with her mother. Takuya listens attentively, showing genuine interest, which surprises Ra. When they arrive at Takuya's childhood home, his grandmother greets them and takes them to his parents' house. At the house, Takuya's family questions Ra's role in his life. His grandmother, sensing the chemistry between Takuya and Ra, suggests that they get along. The family dynamic becomes more complicated when Ra, exhausted from the day, is attended to by the doctor. Takuya's father, Kei, expresses his concerns but, in the end, understands the situation. Takuya explains the fake engagement to his family and they seem to understand, though they're still curious about how it all started. Takuya's family also notices how much he cares for Ra, and his mother and sisters advise him to take care of her. The next surprise comes when Takuya's grandmother places Ra in the same room as Takuya, leading to a series of awkward but tender moments. Takuya tries to leave quietly, but Ra wakes up. They talk about the frog-shaped stone and how it made Takuya feel happy when Ra gave it to him. This heartfelt exchange deepens their bond, and Takuya reminds Ra that since she has been with him, she's been learning new things and experiencing life differently. The trip ends on a high note, with the two sharing an intimate moment, solidifying their growing feelings for each other. The chemistry between Takuya and Ra is undeniable, and the story hints at the possibility of a deeper connection. As a child, Ra spent a lot of time in the mountains, playing without fear. Her curiosity always led her to discover new things. One day, she stumbled upon a small place that became her favorite spot. Inspired by it, she started crafting glass using stones from that lake. Switching topics, now asks about what recently upset Ra. But Ra isn't one to get angry. She mentions the only frustration she had was buying a wrinkled map. This small conversation slowly opens Ra up, leading her to discuss more. Eventually, the important issue arises. Now asks about Ra's commitment to Takuya and says she already knows it was all a lie. She presses, asking if there's nothing between them. Ra, after some thought, says that Takuya should be the one to clarify things. His words never make sense, and he never even mentioned his beautiful friend. Now quietly listens to everything Ra says. Ra wonders if Takuya has always been indecisive, and now explains that he wasn't like that when they were kids. Back then, they used to play together a lot, even getting lost once. Despite the situation, Takuya was brave, and they managed to find their way home. It's clear that the Takuya of today is very different from the one now once knew. Frustrated, Ra grabs her phone and calls Takuya, demanding that he come over to clear up everything. When Takuya arrives, Now is asleep, and Takuya wants to wake her up to take her home, but Ra orders him to sit and talk. Ra directly asks what Takuya wanted to say that night in the middle of the field. Takuya remembers and admits that he only wanted to say he was happy to have traveled with her. Ra, disappointed, thought there was more to it. She thought Takuya wanted to clarify something, but it was just an empty statement. Hiromi prepares for his date by wearing a famous band's jacket and explaining to Takuya that the app he's using connects people with shared interests. He's nervous, wondering if his date will be strange like the last one. At the meeting spot, Takuya and Hiromi wait for the girl. Takuya reflects on how he and Hiromi both feel inadequate, lacking the qualities needed to make someone fall in love with them. Takuya also worries about his financial instability, which could prevent him from marrying. Hiromi's date arrives, dressed in a similar style, and they greet each other with a dance to the music of their favorite artist. Her name is Ki, and she's beautiful, a perfect match for Hiromi. Ki explains that she avoids social media, preferring to keep a low profile, but decided to meet Hiromi after seeing their shared interests. Takuya realizes that everything is going well, so he leaves them alone. Hiromi and Ki have a great time, joking around, singing karaoke, and having dinner together. The evening ends, but Ki wants to talk more about the artist they admire. They exchange numbers, and the next day, Hiromi excitedly shares the details of the date with Takuya, even considering marriage. Takuya, however, advises him to get to know Ki better before rushing into big decisions. Hiromi shares his past, growing up in a dysfunctional family with an argumentative father and a protective brother. He wants a peaceful home, something he never had as a child. Takuya understands Hiromi's desires and wishes him the best. Hiromi meets with Ki the next day, where she reveals that she is a single mother with a young child. Hiromi is initially shocked, but Ki reassures him. Hiromi then seeks advice from Takuya, expressing his worry about supporting a child. He goes to the bank to assess his financial situation and, feeling more prepared, meets Ki again. She trusts him enough to introduce him to her child, but an acquaintance named Icha delivers a message from Ki, assuring Hiromi that she had a great time with him. Hiromi, feeling like he's ruined everything, asks Icha if Ki has any feelings for him. Icha explains that showing him her child means Ki trusts him deeply. Hiromi tells Takuya he's going to stop talking about love and marriage for now, as he's not ready. Meanwhile, Ra reflects on her childhood and present life. She receives a call from Now, who offers her a free workshop as compensation for a past event. At the workshop, Ra begins to open up, and Now helps her with a glass-making project. Ra feels a sense of change, though she's still unsure about her future. Ra's mother, Ritsu, arrives in the city, and Ra meets her, feeling nervous. Ritsu is outgoing, social, and always optimistic. She suggests Ra should work independently, but Ra prefers a more stable path. Ritsu questions Ra's thoughts on marriage, but Ra firmly rejects the idea. Ritsu shares her own experience of a failed marriage, cautioning Ra to choose wisely when the time comes. Takuya, meanwhile, is confused by Ra's behavior, but eventually, he realizes that he's falling for her. Ra also starts to acknowledge her feelings for him. Despite her attempt to push him away, Takuya doesn't give up, and they share a kiss. Both are inexperienced in relationships, so they take time to process what happened. Ra, unsure of why she kissed Takuya, returns home feeling excited yet overwhelmed. Takuya, on the other hand, can't contain his joy. The next day, they try to act normal, but every time they see each other, they blush, remembering the kiss. As the story progresses, they continue to navigate their feelings, unsure of what comes next, but clearly drawn to each other. Asako asks Takuya and Ra to create a report about their experiences at the company to attract new workers. Although they didn't understand why they were chosen, Asako explained that since they were living together, the report would combine their work and personal lives. This would appeal to young people looking for a job, with the added twist of love being part of their story. Takuya and Ra were hesitant, as no one knew they were living together. Takuya began to suspect that the report might be a test to confirm if their relationship was real. They both worried that someone might have discovered their fake engagement. Takuya feared the consequences, while Ra suggested they end the fake relationship to avoid any issues. But Takuya, remembering Ra's words about accepting the consequences, decided they should continue with the project despite their fears. The task presented some challenges. To complete the report, they would need to live together, and the obvious solution was for Ra to move into Takuya's place. However, Ra was concerned about potential problems with Kei, so she hesitated before agreeing to anything. One day, while walking in the mountains, Ra received a knock at the door and found Asako, who explained the rules for the report. Asako added more pressure, and though Takuya and Ra considered abandoning the project, they ultimately decided to stay at Takuya's place to share expenses. However, Takuya didn't want Ra paying for 2 apartments, so they agreed to continue living together. Despite their efforts to handle the situation, Takuya and Ra felt guilty about the lies they had been living. Takuya was especially troubled, and after much thought, he decided to come clean to Asako. But to his surprise, Asako already knew about their fake engagement. Asako was excited about the new experience and reassured them. Feeling guilty, Takuya and Ra realized they needed to fix things, both personally and professionally. They agreed to stop pretending and accept their true feelings. Their relationship, once based on a lie, began to feel more authentic as they faced the challenges of living together and sharing their lives. Eventually, they told their colleagues that they were truly engaged and getting married. Although some people were surprised, they felt a sense of relief. Their relationship deepened, and they began to respect each other's boundaries and interests. Even small moments, like holding hands, became significant as they realized their love for each other. Takuya's family and Ra's mother eventually found out about the engagement. As time passed, they grew closer, ready to face the future together as a genuine couple.